Tonight, we drift back over 4,500 years to explore the story of a kingdom that first bound the cradle of civilization under one crown, the Akkadian Empire. We'll wander through sun-baked city streets, stand beneath towering ziggurats, and listen for the whispers of scribes who shaped a new world order. If these gentle explorations into ancient lives resonate with you, please subscribe so you never miss our descent into history's most enchanting corners. Now, settle back, let the day's worries dissolve, and let your mind drift with me to a time when power was forged in bronze, ink flowed through clay, and a single ruler dared to unite the peoples of Mesopotamia under the world's first superpower. Long before Sargon's banners rippled above Akkad, the Tigris and Euphrates carved life into the dusty plains of Mesopotamia. At dawn, mist clung to sloping riverbanks where reed huts clustered like pale ghosts. Fisherfolk hauled wicker traps from the water's edge, their nets brimming with silver-scaled carp. In nearby fields, farmers stood ankle-deep in cool canal water, guiding muddy currents toward thirsty barley stalks. Small clay shrines, weathered and water-darkened, lined these irrigation channels, each a testament to the villagers' plea for gentle floods rather than devastating deluges. As the sun climbed higher, merchants loaded date palms and pottery onto donkeys. About the latest political shift in Uruk's temple court, children chased after their herds of goats, complaints cutting through the low hum of the awakening settlement. In this fragile mosaic of settlements, control of the rivers meant both survival and power. Whoever commanded the canals could feed armies, fund temples, and inscribe their name on the annals of history. In the coming decades, a young cupbearer named Sargon would see these same waters as the arteries of an empire, redirecting their flow toward a new capital, Akkad. But tonight, as starlight shivers across the dark currents, life in these river-veined villages moves at its gentlest pace, each drop of water a promise of tomorrow's harvest. In the crowded corridors of Urzababa's palace, a young cupbearer named Sargon moved unseen among ministers and priests. His tunic was simple, his sandals worn thin, yet his eyes shimmered with quiet ambition. Each dawn he polished the king's chalice, listening to whispered court intrigues over poured wine. He learned the cadence of power in every clink of clay goblets and smuggled scraps of conversation into his memory. At night, he returned to a modest courtyard home where his mother wove reed baskets by flickering torchlight. There, Sargon dreamed not of grapes, but of uniting the scattered city-states under one rule. By age 30, his keen mind and deft diplomacy won him unlikely allies. Generals who admired his strategies, priests who heard destiny in his prayers. Yet despite his growing influence, Sargon never forgot the cool weight of that first cup and the hushed lesson it taught. True power often flows in silence. As the city slept, he studied maps of canal systems and scribbled plans for a new capital, one that would bear his name and stand at the heart of the burgeoning empire. Tonight, under a velvet sky spangled with stars, we glimpse the man before the legend, aware that every fallen goblet brings him one step closer to forging Mesopotamia's first superpower. At the edge of Akkad's nascent city, workshops glowed with molten bronze and echoed with hammer strikes. Here, artisans learned a revolutionary secret. By mixing copper and tin, they could craft weapons harder and sharper than ever before. Under the watchful eye of master smiths, apprentices shoveled charcoal into roaring furnaces, coaxing bronze to life. The hammers on anvils measured out a new era of war, each ring a promise that Akkad's armies would outmatch any rival. From these foundries emerged spearheads, axes, and the first heavy swords, tools of conquest that would soon redraw Mesopotamia's map. Yet bronze alone did not win battles. Soldiers drilled in tight formations, learning to present a united front behind bronze shields embossed with the nascent Akkadian emblem. As the sky reddened at dusk, smiths quenched glowing blades in water, sending up clouds of steam that scented the air with ozone and coal. By combining cutting-edge metallurgy with disciplined soldiery, Sargon was building more than an army. He was forging an unbeatable symbol of Akkadian might. In the hush before dawn, you can almost hear the steady march of future legions, steel-clad and ready to conquer. Uruk's towering mud-brick walls had repelled invaders for centuries, but now Sargon's bronze-clad legions stood ready at their base. At dawn, battle drums rumbled across the plain, as charioteers urged chestnut horses forward. Archers notched arrows behind shield walls, while siege engines, wooden towers on wheels, creaked as engineers rolled them into position. The city's defenders, armed with sharpened reeds and slings, rained stones down upon the attackers, but the Akkadians pressed on, undeterred by the volleys. Day after day the siege tightened. Sappers tunneled beneath walls, undermining foundations with silent precision. Couriers raced between commanders, bearing clay tablets stamped with Sargon's seal and instructions to intensify pressure at the western gate. Inside Uruk, citizens huddled in cramped quarters, rationing barley and whispering prayers to Ishtar for salvation. As dust swirled in the scorching wind, a battering ram finally shattered a breach. Soldiers poured through the gap, bronze blades glinting, and raised Akkad's banner above Uruk's southern tower. The fall of Uruk confirmed what scholars would later record as Akkad's first great victory. It was not only a conquest of walls, but a testament to coordinated strategy, engineering cunning, and above all, the relentless will of Sargon's vision. With Uruk subdued, Sargon turned to unify his realm. He envisioned a vast thoroughfare stretching from the Gulf's marshes to distant mountain passes. A royal road that would speed horses, traders, and messages across hundreds of miles of scorching desert. Workers drafted embankments, laid crushed stones, and planted shade trees at regular intervals. Way stations rose every 30 miles, offering fresh horses and clay tablet inns for weary couriers. This artery of communication transformed Akkad overnight. A decree issued in the capital could be read in Mari by week's end. Armies marched more swiftly to quell uprisings. Merchants flowed across provinces with silver and lapis. News of foreign threats carried back on dust-stained hooves. Along the road's edge, pilgrims paused at small shrines to praise the gods of safe passage, leaving votive offerings of oil and grain. In the evenings, campfires flickered at way stations as travelers traded tales of distant city-states and strange customs beyond the Tigris. In forging this royal road, Sargon did more than pave stones. He wove together the hearts of his empire, proving that the truest power lies not only in conquest, but in connection. As Sargon's authority spread, the need for clear communication grew urgent. In the heart of Akkad's capital, temple scribes and palace administrators gathered within clay-walled schoolrooms to reshape an ancient script. They pressed reed styluses into wet tablets, adapting Sumerian pictographs into a streamlined system perfectly suited to the Akkadian tongue. Each wedge-shaped impression became a building block for laws, tax records, and royal decrees, tools of governance far more enduring than any soldier. By day, novices copied model texts under the watchful eye of master scribes, their fingers stained with clay dust. By night, scholars debated the syntax of new administrative logs, how best to record tribute from distant provinces, allocate rations for the army, and codify Sargon's edicts. As Cuneiform's characters multiplied, they spread along the royal road, appearing in Mari's archives and Ebla's temple storerooms. This written revolution bound together far-flung provinces in a shared, bureaucratic language. Letters sealed with cylinder stamps crossed the desert, carrying news of harvest yields or mobilization orders. The very act of writing became an assertion of power, testimony that Akkad's reach extended not only across plains and canals, but into the minds of its people. Under starlit roofs, the soft scratching of stylus on clay whispered of an empire whose legacy would echo through millennia. Rising atop a raised platform of kiln-fired brick, the royal palace of Akkad shimmered in the desert heat like a jewel box of alabaster and basalt. Its towering columns, sheathed in polished white stone, reflected sunlight into the cool, shadowed courts within. Here, Sargon held audience beneath vaulted ceilings carved with winged bulls, their stone eyes fixed eternally on any who dared to approach. In the inner sanctum, courtiers in vibrant dyes pressed gold-inlaid gifts into the king's hands, rare lapis lazuli from the northeast, fragrant cedar oil from distant mountains, and intricately carved ivory from southern marshes. Every corner of the palace served a purpose. The throne hall, with its mosaic of glazed bricks, resounded with the soft clatter of sandals as advisors debated military campaigns. In the Hall of Records, scribes catalogued tribute from conquered provinces, their styluses tracing cuneiform logs onto warm clay tablets. Beyond lay private gardens, where water trickled through marble channels into shallow basins of floating lotus flowers, an oasis of serenity for Sargon's family. Flickering oil lamps cast gentle pools of light on carved reliefs depicting past victories and divine patrons. This palace was more than a residence. It was the visual manifesto of Akkad's supremacy. Its gleaming walls and ceremonial chambers proclaimed to visitors, ambassador or rebel envoy alike, that every grain of barley and every drop of water in the empire flowed, ultimately, at the will of its mighty ruler. As Akkad's banners unfurled across Mesopotamia, neighboring courts watched warily. In open-air pavilions pitched outside city walls, Sargon's envoys met with Elamite princes and Mari's royal stewards beneath fluttering pennants. Each clay tablet exchanged was a fragile bridge between empires, sealing trade agreements, exchanging hostages, or pledging mutual defense. Yet beneath the courteous bows lay currents of dissent. Small city-states bristled at tribute demands, and hidden cabals whispered of rebellion in packed taverns. At one such gathering, in the oasis town of Sippar, an Elamite ambassador draped in turquoise brocade pressed a sealed tablet into the hands of Sargon's chief diplomat. Their words, measured and embroidered with flattery, veiled urgent warnings. Sargon's growing power threatened Elam's western flank. That night, under tent lanterns, courtiers murmured over clay cups of date wine, weighing the cost of full alliance versus the risk of revolt. Back in Akkad, secret missives scrawled on palm leaves called on local governors to resist foreign encroachment, rallying tribes who remembered older gods and ancient independence. This dance of negotiation and conspiracy defined Akkad's expansion as much as its armies. While emissaries toasted peace, dissenters carved anti-Akkad slogans onto hidden doorframes. The empire's stability hinged on a delicate balance, winning hearts through tribute and gift, yet crushing sedition before it could spark open revolt. In a sun-drenched courtyard of the royal quarter stood an unassuming wooden box known as the Standard of its mosaic panels tales of Akkadian power. On one side, soldiers in disciplined ranks marched beneath the king's banner, hauling spoils of war. On the other, peaceful scenes of grain distribution and celebratory feasts unfolded. This dual portrait offered subjects and rivals alike a subtle message. Sargon's realm brought both victory on the battlefield and prosperity at home. Crafted by master artisans, the standard's lapis and shell inlays gleamed against bitumen backing. Each figure, archers, charioteers, high priests, farmers, was rendered with meticulous care, as though frozen in time for future generations to admire. Priests carried the standard beneath temple arches during New Year ceremonies, its images reinforcing the God-given legitimacy of Akkadian rule. Pilgrims journeying along the royal road paused to glimpse its scenes, prayers for victory or fertility, depending on their station. Though the wooden core would long since decay, the standard's message endured, that an empire's might lay not only in swords and spears, but in its ability to weave a cohesive narrative of shared triumph. Under torchlit nights, its panels reflected flickers of devotion, urging all who beheld it to remember both the king's conquests and his benevolence. Beyond the grandeur of palaces and battlefields, the backbone of Akkad lay in the daily rhythms of its villages. At dawn, smoke curled from clay ovens as mothers kneaded dough for flatbreads, while fathers guided wooden ploughs through barley fields still damp with morning dew. Children chased ducks along the canal banks, their laughter mingling with the croak of waterbirds. By midday, potters shaped fresh clay into amphorean cups, their wheel-spun vessels destined for bustling bazaars along the royal road. Festivals punctuated the agricultural calendar. Villagers adorned mud-brick shrines with garlands of dates at the harvest festival, chanting blessings for abundant yields. Storytellers gathered under sycamore trees to recite epic tales of heroic kings and divine caprices, legends that bound each community to the wider mythos of empire. Yet hardship shadowed these scenes. A failed flood could wither fields in a single season, and taxation demands could strain even the most diligent households. In such times, neighbors pooled grain and offered shared prayers to Dagon, the grain god, pleading for mercy and renewal. Through these intimate vignettes, we see the human pulse beneath Akkad's vast structure. A tapestry woven of small gestures, sharing a jug of date wine, repairing a cracked pottery shard, humming lullabies to children as stars winked overhead. It was here, in the common clay of village life, that the empire's strength was truly measured. To sustain Akkad's swelling population and armies, Sargon's engineers transformed the landscape with a network of canals, dikes, and reservoirs. At dawn, surveyors marked out levees along winding waterways, their redrawn maps fluttering in the breeze. Massive labor gangs, comprised of farmers, laborers, and even conscripted artisans, hauled mud bricks and reed bundles to reinforce crumbling banks. As the spring floods swelled the Tigris, sluice gates channeled water into newly dug canals that snaked across the plains, turning arid clay into emerald fields of barley and emmer wheat. Each irrigation project carried a sacred dimension. Priests performed purification rites at canal heads, sprinkling frankincense and barley before the first flow of water. Small shrines to Enki, god of fresh water, dotted the embankments, their clay statuettes weathered by sun and water. At midday, overseers tallied advancement on clay tally sticks, calling out adjustments to alignments and depths. By evening, villagers gathered at newly irrigated fields to inspect the soft green shoots glistening in the dying light. These hydraulic feats became the empire's true arteries. Without them, neither army nor court could thrive. Sargon boasted that no drop of life-giving water in all Mesopotamia flowed without his sanction. Under starlit skies, the gentle gurgle of canal waters carried the empire's promise of abundance into every farmhouse and barracks alike. While Sargon's name echoed across battlefields, it was often his female relatives and priestesses who wielded subtle but profound influence. Princess Enheduanna, Sargon's daughter, served as high-priestess of Ur, her hymns to Inanna sung throughout the empire. Cloaked in linen robes, dyed the rarest blue from crushed lapis, she commanded ceremonies that fused religious devotion with political unity. In temple cloisters, she guided novice priestesses through intricate rituals, offering bread and beer to goddess statues, invocations that asked for fertility and protection, and interpreting dreams sent by devotees. Elsewhere, palace matrons managed vast estates, negotiating grain allotments and textile production that fed both temple and treasury. In private courtyards, they taught daughters the art of cuneiform, ensuring that future generations of royal women could read clay tablets and oversee their own fiefdoms. Their letters, sealed with cylinder stamps, travelled the royal road, dispensing guidance to governors and reminding distant officials of the Queen's ear that heard all petitions. Though seldom chronicled in military annals, these women shaped Akkad's social fabric, balancing the king's martial ambitions with domestic stability, preserving oral law through ritual gatherings, and safeguarding family lineages against court intrigue. Under starlit skies, their whispering prayers and measured counsel wove an unseen tapestry of power, one in which ink and invocation held as much sway as bronze and blood. Despite Sargon's iron grip, whispers of revolt stirred in outlying provinces. In the deserts beyond Akkad's canals, tribal leaders chafed under heavy tribute demands. In city-states like Umar and Lagash, disgruntled nobles plotted to reclaim ancient autonomy. Under cover of night, conspirators scribbled secret messages on palm leaves, passing them through tavern backrooms where the clamour of clay-cup toasts concealed furtive whispers. When news of dissent reached the capital, Sargon's envoys returned with hastily drafted proclamations threatening divine wrath and military reprisal. Drumbeats summoned loyal regiments to stand ready at provincial gates. Scouts rode hard along the royal road, their horses' hooves echoing like distant thunder. In one dramatic stroke, Sargon marched west with bronze-clad legions, quelling rebellion with a show of force. Yet he tempered victory with clemency, reinstalling compliant governors and sparing common folk heavy punishment to discourage future unrest. These rebellions tested the empire's resilience, prompting Sargon to refine his strategies. Rotating garrisons to distant posts, sponsoring local festivals to foster goodwill, and codifying clearer laws in Cuneiform to limit arbitrary levies. Each storm of rebellion strengthened his rule, forging protocols that would outlast his own reign. Umar, once a prosperous city-state, famed for its boundary disputes with Lagash, dared to challenge Akkad's authority. As its rulers fortified marketplace walls and rallied citizen militias armed with slings and spears, Sargon prepared a decisive response. His armies advanced at first light, the glint of bronze axes and swords heralding the end of Umar's defiance. Siege towers creaked into position, archers laid down suppressing fire, and battering rams shattered wooden gates. When the walls tumbled, Sargon rode into the city's great courtyard astride a caparisoned stallion. He ordered the confiscation of Umar's silver reserves and compelled the ruling family to swear fealty before a crowd of bowed citizens. Yet rather than exact total destruction, he installed a loyal vassal, allowing local traditions to continue under Akkadian oversight. Grain tithes were slightly reduced for a season as a gesture of reassurance, and royal artisans repaired Umar's temples in Sargon's name. This blend of strength and strategic mercy became a hallmark of Akkadian rule, teaching other provinces that rebellion would meet swift punishment, but loyalty could yield prosperity and respect. In Umar's quiet streets afterward, merchants resumed trading date wine and pottery, reassured that life under the empire, though firm, still allowed room for ritual, commerce, and community. Power in Akkad was inseparable from divine favor. Sargon elevated gods old and new: Nanna, god of the moon; Dagon, master of grain; and Nergal, lord of war, enshrining each with grand temples of mud brick and gilded doors. Priests in saffron robes recited daily offerings, barley loaves, dates, and libations of beer piped through copper vessels. Sacred processions wound through city streets, carrying effigies encrusted with precious stones, their bearers hymns that echoed off palace walls. Central to royal ideology was Ishtar, goddess of love and warfare. Sargon claimed her visions guided his conquests, commissioning countless reliefs, showing her bestowing weapons upon the king. In the grand ziggurat at Kish, Sculpted bas-reliefs depicted Sargon kneeling before her throne, a gesture of pious humility designed to rally soldiers and subjects alike. Yet religion was not mere spectacle. Oracles consulted sheep entrails to forecast harvests. Astrologers charted Venus's movements for timing military campaigns. And exorcists chanted to ward off malevolent spirits believed to lurk in marshlands. Through this intricate tapestry of faith, the empire bound its people together, soldier and scribe, farmer and noble, under the watchful gaze of gods whose will, they believed, shaped every grain of barley and every swing of the battle axe. Akkad's wealth flowed not just from conquest, but from commerce along land and river routes. At dawn, markets in Kish and Akkad teemed with traders, haggling over cargoes of lapis, copper ingots, and fragrant cedar oil. Donkey caravans, their wagons creaking under barrels of olive oil and jars of wine, snaked across desert tracks toward Anatolia and the Levant. Riverboats laden with grain and textiles drifted down the Euphrates, guided by mariners whose oars carved steady rhythms through glassy waters. Merchants employed a sophisticated credit system. Clay tokens recorded debts and repayments, while trusted agents in distant cities transacted on behalf of absent partners. Each midday, scribes at caravanserai inns tallied accounts, pressing styluses into tablets stamped with cylinder seals of individual traders. Luxury goods, ivory carvings, imported shells, and refined garments draped noble households, signaling status and forging alliances through gift exchange. Yet trade also carried risks. Sandstorms could strand caravans for days, and river floods threatened to swamp boats. Armed escorts of spearmen accompanied valuable loads, their bronze-tipped pikes deterring bandits. In prosperous towns, merchants donated generously to temple treasuries, funding expansions of ziggurats and endowing rituals in gratitude for safe passage. Through these vibrant exchanges, Akkad became the economic heart of the ancient world, its silver wheels turning steadily beneath banners of cuneiform promise. In Akkad's cities, healing blended empirical remedies with sacred rites. Apprentices in temple infirmaries learned to prepare poultices from poppy sap, willow bark, and crushed tamarisk leaves, early precursors to pain-relieving salves. Clay jars inscribed with pharmacopoeia lined stone shelves, each labeled with dosage and deity invoked for its efficacy. Physicians mixed these herbal treatments under oil lamp glare, chanting incantations to Gula, goddess of healing, ensuring both body and spirit were soothed. When epidemics swept through crowded wards, exorcists joined physicians in ritual purification, fumigating rooms with cedar smoke, drawing protective symbols in ash on doorposts, and reciting spells to drive out malevolent demons, believed to cause fever and delirium. Midwives, their aprons damp with birthing fluids, carried prayer amulets to ease labor. Even the king sought divine intervention, sending offerings to temple infirmaries when court nobles fell ill. These medical practices formed an early nexus of science and spirituality. Tablets detailing symptoms, coughing fits, digestive woes, skin lesions survive as testaments to meticulous observation. Though modern readers might wince at certain therapies, in their time they offered genuine relief and hope. Under flickering torchlight, the soft murmur of healing prayers blended with the scent of herbs, weaving a comforting promise that no ailment lay beyond Akkad's compassionate reach. Dominating the skyline of Akkad's capital, ziggurats reached skyward in terraced tiers, monumental staircases to the gods. Each platform was a sacred precinct. The lower terraces housed storerooms for offerings, mid-level courts hosted priestly gatherings, and the summit held the holy cellar, where divine statues stood enthroned. At sunrise, Priests ascended these flights of steps, their robes trailing behind, bearing trays of incense and libations to place before sculpted divinities. Construction required immense coordination. Laborers wove reed mats reinforced with bitumen between baked brick layers to prevent slippage. Architects surveyed alignments using plumb bobs and star charts. Seasonal festivals brought entire communities to assist in bricklaying. Akkad, their chants echoed by the clatter of trowels. In the glow of dawn, ziggurats cast long shadows across courtyards, a daily reminder of Akkad's bond between earth and cosmos. Yet these towers served not only ritual, they functioned as astronomical observatories. Priests charted Venus's cycles from rooftop platforms, advising kings on auspicious dates for campaigns and ceremonies. As dusk settled, torches illuminated the summit shrine, sending flickers of light visible for miles across flat plains. Through these colossal stairways, the empire bridged human ambition and divine favor, ascending ever closer to the mysteries of the heavens. Across Akkad's cities, royal decrees and victory poems were carved into stone pillars and palace walls in crisp cuneiform. Each inscription proclaimed Sargon's divine right to rule, his victories channels of divine will, his administrative reforms blessings upon the people. Monumental stelae stood at city gates, their faces etched with reliefs of subdued enemies, kneeling beneath the king's chariot wheels. In temple forecourts, dedicatory tablets chronicled offerings to gods in Sargon's name, ensuring priests and pilgrims recognized the king's piety. Stone carvers, artists of unparalleled skill, chiseled these narratives with precision. Apprentices traced outlines under flickering torchlight, before masters deepened each wedge-shaped stroke. At midday, couriers paused at these markers, reading aloud passages to labor gangs and traders, reinforcing the message that the might of Akkad was eternal. Even remote villages displayed smaller clay plaques echoing the same lines, a grassroots network of royal propaganda. This deliberate orchestration of written word forged a collective consciousness. It bound soldiers at the frontier, scribes in distant archives, and farmers in flooded fields to a unified story of cosmic destiny. In carving stone, Sargon etched his empire into the very bedrock of history, ensuring that long after bricks crumbled, his voice would resonate through every whispered line of cuneiform. To cement alliances where swords faltered, Sargon employed diplomacy through dynastic marriage. Royal brides, draped in dyed wool robes and adorned with lapis and gold, journeyed along the royal road to distant courts in Elam and Mari. Each marriage contract, inscribed on clay tablets and sealed with cylinder stamps, outlined terms of loyalty, dowries of silver and textile, and mutual defense pacts. In lavish ceremonies beneath canopies of woven reeds, the bride's arrival was celebrated with offerings of frankincense and soft music from lyre players. Feasts stretched late into the night. Roasted lamb, sweetened dates, and barrels of fermented grain wine passed amid toasts, invoking heavenly witness. As diplomat priests oversaw oath-taking at temple altars, political rivals plotted alliances in whispered corners, mirroring the public spectacle with clandestine maneuvering. These unions wove a web of familial ties across Mesopotamia, making rebellion more fraught for kings bound by blood. Offspring of such marriages carried dual loyalties, ensuring that the peace stitched by Sargon's emissaries endured beyond treaties. Through these personal bonds, the empire's reach extended into hearts and hearths, proving that sometimes the most potent weapon is not the sword, but the promise of kinship. Under Akkad's banner, artisans and musicians from distant lands converged on the capital's workshops and courts. In amber-lit studios, sculptors from Elam and Anatolia carved ivory combs and stone reliefs in hybrid Sumerian Akkadian styles. Nearby, lapis-inlaid cylinder seals bore motifs of hunters and deities, traded as tokens of status. At dusk, courtyards filled with the Elas of Lies and the Elas of Double Pipes. Dancers from the Zagros hills performed angular footwork, their cloaks swirling like fallen leaves. Royal patrons commissioned epic poems to be set to music, verses praising Sargon's victories, woven into refrains that villagers would hum by canal banks. Temple choirs, led by Enheduanna's successors, blended Sumerian temple hymns with Akkadian lyrics, fostering a shared cultural lexicon. Merchants, returning from Mari, brought new drum designs. Potters experimented with glazed motifs inspired by Elamite ceramics. This fusion forged a vibrant artistic ecosystem. A bronze-clad soldier might pause to marvel at a storyteller's Akkadian, while a potter learned a new floral pattern from a visiting artisan. Through these exchanges, the empire stitched together diverse traditions, proving that the soft power of art and music could bind subjects as effectively as walls and armies. Akkad's power hinged on its vast granaries, vaulted chambers of mud brick where barley and emmer wheat piled knee-high. At harvest end, labor crews loaded sacks onto shoulder yokes, parading through festival arches into the storage halls. Priests invoked Dagon's blessing as they measured quotas on clay tally sticks, distributing rations for the army and temple staff. Yet droughts or river silts could choke canals, turning abundance into crisis. During lean seasons, governors opened emergency stores, handing out boiled grains mixed with pounded legumes to stave off hunger. Public granaries doubled as communal kitchens. Women stirred colossal cauldrons of barley soup, while children lined up with clay bowls. Even the palace kitchens relied on these reserves. Bakers turned old grain into flatbreads and ale, sustaining courtiers and soldiers alike. Through meticulous record-keeping, each clay tablet stamped with the administrator's seal, Akkad learned to anticipate shortages. When canals clogged, repair crews mobilized within days. When rains failed, caravans rerouted grain from Anatolia. These measures showcased the empire's logistical prowess, mastery over nature's unpredictability and social stability achieved through the simple yet vital act of feeding its people. When Sargon passed, his grandson Naram-Sin ascended amid both reverence and unrest. Governors resistant to central rule seized the moment to revolt, cities like Umar, Lagash, and Ebla pledging independence. In dusty council chambers, rebels swore blood oaths beneath flickering torches, forging alliances against the royal house. Naram-Sin responded with swift campaigns. He donned a new horned helmet, declaring himself divine, then led legions across scarred plains. His bronze-tipped spears cut through rival phalanxes. Siege engines battered city walls until gates groaned open. After each victory, he erected victory stela, towering slabs proclaiming, Naram-Sin, King of Akkad, God of the Four Quarters. Yet he tempered vengeance with pragmatic clemency, restoring local temples under his divine protection and granting tax reliefs to win hearts. These tumultuous years tested the durability of Akkadian governance by blending religious innovation, claiming godhood, and calculated mercy. Naram-Sin forged a model that outlasted his own reign. In the hush after battle, the empire breathed again, reminded that power, however absolute, must accommodate both fear and favor. In the rugged Zagros foothills, Naram-Sin's forces clashed with the Lulubi tribes. When battle concluded, he commemorated victory with a monumental stele carved from pink limestone, a relief where the king, astride a rearing steed, tramples foes beneath his horse's hooves. An eagle-headed sun god hovers above, bestowing triumph. Artisans chiseling the steel labored under Naram-Sin's exacting gaze. Each figure, warriors, mountain gods, fallen enemies, was rendered with dynamic motion, capturing the raw drama of conquest. The stele's placement at the mountain pass entrance served as warning. No traveler or trader could pass without acknowledging Akkad's supremacy. Pilgrims from Lower Mesopotamia journeyed to view the carving, leaving oil libations at its base. Merchants paused in caravans to read the inscription aloud, ensuring the tale of Naram-Sin's divine victory echoed across the empire. This stone declaration blurred the line between history and myth, casting the king not merely as a ruler, but as a cosmic enforcer of order. At the fringes of Akkad, distant powers tested its reach. Egyptian dignitaries arrived bearing gold leaf fans and papyrus scrolls seeking access to Mesopotamian lapis and tin. In return, Sargon dispatched cedar beams and barley, forging an exchange sealed by shared diplomatic protocol, handshakes framed by clasped cylinder seals. In another pavilion, Hittite envoys draped in spotted cloaks negotiated safe passage through Anatolian highlands. These talks, conducted in Sumerian and Akkadian tongues, required skilled interpreters who balanced literal translation with cultural nuance. At twilight feasts, emissaries toasted to mutual prosperity, sampling sweet date wine and roasted locusts. Yet beneath the conviviality lay veiled suspicion, each side probing for military alliances or covert intelligence. Clay tablets documenting these treaties were stored in temple archives and replicated for city-state leaders across Mesopotamia. When disputes arose, over trade tolls or border skirmishes, these tablets formed the first international legal corpus, adjudicated by priests-judges versed in Akkadian law. Thus, diplomatic channels extended the empire's influence not through force, but through negotiated consensus. To reflect its newfound power, Akkad's capital underwent an ambitious redesign. Straight avenues replaced winding lanes, flanked by uniform rows of two-story mud brick houses. Palaces and temples occupied elevated plazas, their formal entrances aligned to the four cardinal points, an architectural declaration of cosmic order. Public baths, fed by aqueduct-fed cisterns, offered respite from the desert heat, while shaded colonnades provided shelter for early morning markets. City planners used reed-drawn blueprints to allocate zones for artisans, priests, and soldiers, ensuring that noise and pollution stayed clear of residential quarters. Work gangs followed precise instructions etched on clay tablets. Lay foundations 3 cubits deep, coat walls with waterproof bitumen, and finish facades with polished stucco. Overseers tallied progress daily, adjusting schedules to account for seasonal floods or labor festivals. As dusk fell, oil lamps illuminated freshly plastered walls, glowing like pale embers against the cooling sky. Citizens strolled broad promenades shaded by date palms, pausing at roadside shrines for evening offerings. This urban revolution went beyond aesthetics. By zoning workshops away from granaries and routing traffic along main roads, planners reduced fire hazards and improved trade efficiency. In reshaping the city, Sargon not only showcased Akkad's grandeur, but also engineered a practical environment where governance, commerce, and daily life coexisted in harmonious balance. In dedicated tablet schools, elite boys, and occasionally privileged girls learned the art of cuneiform and the principles of administration. Under the stern gaze of master scribes, students sat cross-legged on reed mats, copying model texts on damp clay tablets. Lessons began at dawn with recitations of Sumerian proverbs, followed by exercises in Akkadian grammar, mathematics, and law. Discipline was strict. Mistakes earned swift correction, and broken styluses meant fines deducted from future allowances. Yet rewards included public readings of exemplary tablets in the Hall of Records, a prestigious honor that opened doors to high office. Apprentices practiced complex accounting on token-based counting boards and memorized royal decrees to expedite real-time record-keeping. Outside lessons, students studied astronomy in temple observatories, charting planets to predict auspicious dates. They debated theology in shaded courtyards, honing rhetorical skills essential for diplomacy and court service. Meals of barley cakes and goat cheese were shared communally, fostering bonds that would later translate into networks of influence. By shaping the minds of future administrators, these tablet schools ensured that Akkad's bureaucracy remained both efficient and loyal. As torchlight faded each evening, the soft scratching of styluses echoed through silent halls, a testament to the enduring power of education in sustaining an empire. Each spring, Akkad erupted into jubilant celebration as the New Year festival honored Inanna's renewal of life. For 12 days, priests and citizens adorned city gates with palm fronds and colorful banners. Processions wound through broad avenues. Dancers in feathered headdresses leaped to drumbeats. Acrobats spun torches high into the air, and musicians played reed pipes beneath fluttering streamers. Temples opened their inner sanctums to lay worshippers who offered loaves of date bread and clay vessels of beer. At the Ziggurats summit, high-priestesses lit torches in a sunrise ceremony, their chants echoing across assembled crowds. Feasting tables groaned under roasted lamb, honey-glazed figs, and platters of pomegranate seeds, food symbolizing abundance and rebirth. Midway through the festival, a ceremonial battle of shadows enacted creation myths. Actors dressed as primordial demons were driven back by priests wielding insulated copper rods, an allegory of light conquering darkness. Children chased candlelit lanterns through streets at dusk, their laughter mingling with the clamor of celebratory horns. In these festivities, the empire found unity, social divisions blurred under shared merriment and ritual. As the final torches flickered out on the last night, citizens returned home, assured that the cycle of seasons and Akkad's destiny would continue under the benevolent gaze of the gods. To safeguard the capital, Sargon commissioned massive defensive walls, reinforced with mud bricks and bitumen. At strategic intervals, 20 towering gates, each named for a deity, controlled access to the city. Engineers used wooden scaffolds and rammed earth techniques to erect ramparts 20 cubits high, creating a forbidding barrier against invaders. Watchtowers crowned the walls, manned day and night by sentries who scanned the horizon. Signal fires blinked warnings between towers, relaying alerts of approaching armies. Beneath each gate, clergy performed protective rituals, sprinkling holy water and inscribing apotropaic symbols into the plaster to ward off siege engines. Despite their strength, the walls also served civic functions. Markets sprang up at gate plazas where regional traders sold exotic goods, timber from the Zagros, shells from the Persian Gulf. Festival processions paused at these gates, pausing for blessings from guardian deities carved above each entrance. In constructing these fortifications, Akkad demonstrated that engineering mastery could both protect and unify. As dust settled on completed walls, the city exhaled a collective sigh of security, knowing that within these ramparts, commerce, faith, and governance could flourish unthreatened. Slaves formed the hidden foundation of Akkad's grand projects. Captured from conquered lands or born into servitude, they toiled in quarries, fields, and workshops under overseers' watchful eyes. Clad in loincloths, they hauled limestone blocks for ziggurat foundations and carried reed bundles for canal reinforcement. Though their labor fueled imperial ambitions, daily life offered moments of community. In sparse quarters, they shared clay bread, swapped stories of distant homelands, and passed time carving small talismanic figurines from leftover shards. Temple records noted that some skilled slaves, potters, metalworkers, singers, earned modest rations and the possibility of manumission. Their talents graced palace kitchens with fine pottery and enriched temple ceremonies with music. Yet, most endured grueling schedules. Some baked fields by day, quarry blasts at dawn. Overseers tallied their output on tally sticks, meting out extra rations for exceptional work or withholding them as punishment. Despite hardships, slaves influenced cultural transmission. They carried artistic techniques from Anatolia to Mesopotamia, introduced forging methods from the mountains, and whispered foreign words into local dialects. In their resilience and adaptability lay an unspoken testament. Even the empire's mightiest achievements rested upon the shoulders of those bound by chains, whose stories, though unchronicled, wove through every brick and canal of Akkad. Beyond Akkad's fertile plains lay the Zagros and Lebanon ranges, rich in cedar forests and mineral veins. Logging parties felled ancient cedars, their trunks hollowed to fashion boats and beams for palace roofs. Downstream, Rafts of sawn planks drifted toward the capital, joined by pack caravans carrying copper ingots and tin, essential alloys for bronze. In rocky highland camps, miners chiseled veins of malachite and galena, smelting ores in portable furnaces to yield pigments and metals. Priests consecrated new quarries with libations of oil and barley, asking Enki for safe labor and abundant yield. Skilled foresters marked trees with reed flags, ensuring sustainable harvests. Engineers then cut tracks through dense woods for ox-drawn sledges. Metalworkers in Akkad's foundries expected these supplies each season, their bronze smithing dependent on mountain tin, their pigments brightened by ground malachite. This mountain trade wove together disparate ecosystems, forest and desert, highland and lowland. Caravans braved narrow passes and flash floods, while envoys negotiated passage with tribal leaders. In every plank of cedar and every bronze blade, the rugged heights left their mark on Akkad's grandeur, proof that even the world's first superpower relied on collaboration across varied terrains. In Akkad's temples, diviners read the future in entrails, oil patterns, and the flight of birds. Haruspices, cloaked in fringed robes, examined sheep livers, each scar and hue a whisper of blessing or doom. Astrologers charted Venus's descent behind a ziggurat tower, advising kings on when to march or make treaties. In quiet chambers, exorcists drew protective symbols in ash on doorposts, chanting incantations to fend off demons believed to lurk in marsh mists. Soldiers carried talismanic amulets, tiny clay plaques inscribed with God's names, before battle, trusting divine favor more than steel alone. Merchants paused at crossroad shrines to toss clay billets into offering bowls, seeking safe passage. When omens portended disaster, a lunar eclipse, or an unseasonal storm, priests organized collective fasts and purification rites, sacrificing grain and pouring libations to appease angry deities. The empire's administrative scribes logged each portent, cross-referencing disasters against divinatory records to refine future predictions. This web of ritual and superstition underpinned Akkad's social contract. Obedience in exchange for heavenly protection. In every clay-slatted hut and marble-panelled palace, fear and faith intertwined, reminding all that even the mightiest empire bowed before unknown forces of fate. Akkad's army excelled not only through numbers, but through cutting-edge weaponry. Composite recurve bows, combining wood, horn, and sinew, delivered arrows with unmatched power. Archers drilled daily beneath officers' watchful eyes, learning to fire in volleys that darkened the sky. Meanwhile, engineers refined siegecraft. Torsion-powered catapults flung heavy stones, and battering rams, reinforced with bronze caps, shuddered against fortified gates. At training camps outside the city walls, recruits marched in tight phalanxes, carrying long spears and round shields embossed with the royal emblem. Cavalry units clad in scale armor learned to execute flanking maneuvers on open plains. Commanders studied terrain maps, etched on clay tablets, to exploit hills and river bends in battle plans. These innovations transformed warfare's face. In the siege of Uruk, composite archers rained down a lethal hail, while catapults breached walls once deemed impregnable. Veterans passed down blueprints for siege engines in clay-stamped cases, ensuring that each campaign built upon previous victories. As dusk fell on battlefields, the glow of campfires revealed lines of bow-armed infantry poised for tomorrow's advance. In the latter days of Naram-Sin's reign, a mysterious illness spread along trade routes, striking cities from Agade to Ur. Victims developed fevers and rashes. Temple infirmaries overflowed with the afflicted. Physicians and exorcists worked side by side, administering herbal poultices of poppy and willow, while reciting purification rites to expel malevolent spirits. Governors imposed quarantines, sealing city gates and burning fragrant juniper to cleanse the air. Couriers delayed dispatches, slow-burning torches marking plague zones. Priests recorded each outbreak on clay tablets, noting correlations between seasonal floods and disease spikes. In the capital, Sargon himself offered additional sacrifices at Enlil's temple, pleading for relief. Despite these measures, mortality soared among the young and elderly. Social order strained as labor shortages hampered food production and canal maintenance. Yet communal solidarity emerged. Villagers shared grain with quarantined neighbors. Temple granaries opened their doors to feed orphans. Healers worked around the clock, whispers of hope echoing through hushed corridors. Although the plague's ultimate cause remained unknown, its impact reshaped Akkad's policies, prompting early public health directives and reinforcing the value of recorded observations. In clay-bound archives, these records would guide future generations in confronting unseen threats. Centuries after Akkad's fall, its monuments still dotted the Mesopotamian plain. Ruined ziggurats, half buried in sand, bore faint cuneiform traces, while toppled palace columns lay scattered like giant reeds. In the 19th century CE, explorers marveled at these remnants, the victory stele of Naram-Sin, its pink limestone relief weathered but legible, foundation cones inscribed with Sargon's names protruding from collapsed walls. Archaeologists painstakingly catalogued each fragment, reassembling palace mosaics in distant museums. Local villagers repurposed carved stones for watermills and tomb markers, unaware of their imperial origin. Yet the enduring presence of Akkadian artistry and engineering inspired later empires. Assyrian kings claimed lineage to Sargon, and Neo-Babylonian architects replicated his city grids. In quiet desert nights, the silhouettes of ziggurats still inspire wonder, monuments to an age when a cupbearer's dream became the world's first superpower. Through the vitality of these stones, Akkad's story resonates across millennia, reminding us that human ambition, recorded in clay and chiseled in rock, can transcend the limits of time. For millennia, cuneiform lay unread, its wedge tracings indecipherable until scholars of the 19th century tackled the puzzle. European linguists collected clay tablets from ruined sites, comparing trilingual inscriptions, Akkadian, Elamite, and Old Persian, on royal proclamations. Henry Rawlinson's meticulous copies of the Behistun inscription unlocked key correspondences. Repeated names of kings and gods illuminated the script's phonetics. In dusty libraries, academics debated sign values and grammar, reconstructing Akkadian vocabulary from thousands of fragments. As each tablet yielded its secrets, laws, letters, hymns, a vibrant civilization re-emerged from silence. Universities established cuneiform studies, training new generations to read clay-bound histories. Today, digital archives host high-resolution scans of tablets once buried under rubble. Linguists use 3D modeling to analyze wear patterns, distinguishing scribal hands and workshop schools. Through this revival, the voices of Sargon, Enheduanna, and countless unnamed scribes echo once more. Testament to the enduring power of written word. Outside royal courts, Akkadian women led vibrant lives as merchants, farmers, and artisans. In bustling bazaars, traders like Zakitu bartered dates and woven textiles, her stacked trays of pottery gleaming under the sun. Farm women tended communal gardens, planting and harvesting flax used for linen production, a trade often controlled by female cooperatives. In artisan quarters, weavers spun colourful tapestries, their intricate patterns reflecting village traditions. Legal documents reveal women owning property, settling disputes, and even representing clients in temple courts. When disputes over dowries arose, female elders mediated with clay-sealed contracts, ensuring fairness under Akkadian law. Some rose to prominence as temple singers, their musical talents recorded on hymn tablets praising Inanna's power. Though seldom depicted on stelae, these women shaped daily life and local economies, subtle forces that sustained empire from ground level. In the evening hush, they gathered at courtyard wells, sharing news, spinning yarn, and lullabies that blended Sumerian melodies with Akkadian refrains. Through their labor and lore, the silent majority of Akkad's civilization lives on, woven into every garment and song. By the late 22nd century BCE, climate shifts choked canals with silt, triggering drought and crop failures. Famine swept across Akkad's provinces, weakening central authority. Amid scarcity, the Gutian tribes from the Zagros seized opportunity, raiding towns and severing trade routes. City governors, starved of grain and power, abandoned distant garrisons. Naram-Sin's successors struggled to rally armies. Steel-hungry smiths found copper scarce, and levy quotas went unmet. In a final desperate plea, a last ruler inscribed a clay lament. "Our fields thirst, our rivers run dry. Gutians devour our lands." Archaeologists later uncovered this tablet amid collapsed debris. When the capital fell, its palaces and ziggurats lay silent under wind-blown sand. Refugees fled to peripheral city-states, Mari, Assur, and carrying wooden idols and clay tablets as relics of a fading dynasty. Though Akkad's empire fragmented, its innovations in administration, warfare, and culture persisted under new rulers who adopted Sargon's systems. In the empire's end, we see how environmental change and external pressure can topple even the greatest power, echoing across ages as a cautionary tale of resilience and vulnerability intertwined. Though Akkad fell, its legacy shaped successors for millennia. The Neo-Sumerian dynasty revived ziggurat construction, while Assyrian kings claimed descent from Sargon, invoking his name on their own victory stele. Babylonian scribes preserved Akkadian law codes, adapting them into the famous Code of Hammurabi. Even Persian satraps maintained provincial governors, reporting via clay tablet, an administrative system born in Akkad. Temples at and Nippur continue to recite Enheduanna's hymns, merging her verses with local liturgies. Artisans emulated Akkadian cylinder seal motifs, and military engineers across the Near East copied siege ram designs, first tested at Uruk. Trade caravans still followed the royal road's course, long after its stones crumbled, its ghostly tracks guiding merchants from Anatolia to Elam. Through these threads, Akkad's spirit endured, an invisible architect of law, art, and infrastructure. Successive empires built upon its foundations, each layer a testament to that first unification under Sargon's dream. In Mesopotamia's ever-shifting tapestry, the colors of Akkad continue to shine. As our journey through Akkad's rise and fall concludes, we stand amid silent ruins, listening for the empire's last whisper on desert winds. The Tigris flows unchanged, carrying echoes of cupbearers and soldiers, priests and potters. Each brick, once laid by laborers' sweat, bears silent witness to human ambition. The forging of bronze weapons, the etching of laws, the building of stairways to the sky. In modern museums and digital archives, Akkadian tablets speak again, stories of conquest and compassion, innovation and faith. Archaeologists brush away sand to reveal cuneiform lines that connect us to Sargon's vision of unity. Through satellite surveys, we map the contours of ancient canals, understanding how empire flowed as much through water as much as through war. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine the bustle of Agade's streets at dawn, the murmur of canal water, the soft scratching of stylus on clay. Remember that the first superpower was built not on mythology alone, but on human ingenuity and collective effort. Its final whisper reminds us, every civilization rises from humble beginnings, and in every fall lies the seed of renewal.